My name is Fred McKinney. I've been a member back in 2008 on CFTA, and then I'm back. I've seen a lot of changes in what you guys pay attention. 2008, AutoCAD was the big issue, and everybody had the same problem they have with BIM. The architects give me drawing with 2,000 layers. What do I do with it? Well, clean them up. So as I, oh great, this doesn't work now. So as I move on with in doing working with FM systems and AutoCAD and so forth. In my professional career, I learned a lot of different things. So when I graduated in 1982 at the University of Florence as an architect, my thesis was about regional planning. And I did it on an IBM 370, a mainframe. And I had to go bring my data to the technician. The technician took the data, put it into the mainframe, did whatever, and we used statistical tools. And he would give me back basically a bunch of numbers. So what that taught me was to be frugal. It wasn't like today, if it doesn't work, you do it again, you do it on a laptop over and over and over. So you have to do it once, you have to do it right. So you have to think about it, and you learn what, the use of that technology. Then I went to Penn State. I was lucky to be awarded a scholarship there, and I did my master. And we use digital equipment, the 750s, called the washing machine, because they're like a washing machine. And there, part of my thesis was we designed a 3D system. And what I learned from it was how this world of the world of an architect could be translated into a computer language. There was no flyover. It was the ability to pluck three-dimensional points and draw lines and square. At the time, drawing cubes, and it was an achievement. It wasn't like today, virtual reality. So what that taught me about user technology as an architect in this world. Then I move on and I work with systems that doesn't exist anymore. McDonnell Douglas GDS was the first BIM system, and it was used very heavily in Japan to manage the nuclear reactors. So they designed the. So then I went on and worked in university. I designed a GIS system, implemented space management systems. So all along, I keep trotting around with all those, the technology and seeing how the technology could be applied either as an architect or in facilities. And at one point, I went like, wait a minute. What do we do with people? Technology is great. It helps us do a bunch of stuff. But buildings are used by people. People are those who make universities work. You can quantify this room by lights and everything, but the more important thing is that this is in a classroom, and the people that comes in, the things they do in the classroom. So, so people matter, and people defines how well an institution performs. Everybody wants to hire the best and the brightest. Everybody wants to smart people. However, in many instances, there's this reluctance of trying to understand what people are within the institution, what they do, what they contribute to the institution, what their value as their work is within the institution. And so that's something that now I start thinking about it, and that brings us to to this presentation, and where I try to convey to you is, the value of knowing where your people are within your institution, why your institution should actually invest in the effort on knowing where people are. A few years back, I had a VP of facilities. I was asked to go to her office, and she asked me, says, "Why do we want to know where people are?" It wasn't absolutely on her radar. So her focus was, the place has to work 24/7, 365. We got students, has to be clean, safe, classes has to go on. But there was this reluctance in getting into more understanding about, the people within the institution. And ultimately, I hope we're going to come up with some strategies and outcomes, and I will give you some suggestions. The other thing is, please interrupt me, ask me questions. So this little village is Manhattan. This is New Jersey. I'm actually live here, but this is a city that it's 1.7 million people at night. It's 4 million people during the day. Grand Central and Penn Station, they're basically imagine two huge tunnels where people literally rushes out by the thousands and thousands, and it's during the day is the most populated city in the U.S. and probably one of, maybe, I don't know, Tokyo, Beijing, I'm sure they're bigger, but that's the highly dense, a lot of things happening in there. I Googled a few things, looking through the real estate, their association. It's about $1 trillion worth of real estate right there. And there is over 600 billion square feet of office space. So those are the numbers for that place there. And then we have this. This is the Hacker Lab, named after the president of University of Delaware. It's a beautiful research building, 200,000 square feet, $120 million. So it translates to $600 per square foot. And this is a collaborative lab. So imagine you have this lab, a common room, and a lab on the other side. The students, they do in this teaching lab, they do whatever they want, then go into the common space, which is probably a little bit bigger than this room. And it's literally plastered with plasma, huge screens. So the students come out, get their laptops, design their results, discuss, and they go back. And it's a great, I think is one of the best teaching labs that I've seen. So why I told you all this? Well, I'm driving to this slide. You look at New York, you look at the lab, you look at whatever you want. Organization and businesses are made out of these three things. They're made out of people, space, and resources. So it could be financial resources, could be your HR. What resources is, things that makes those other two things work. And we do that, we look at this all the time through time. Organizations don't stay still. They change. What your institution is today is not going to be the same in a week. This accounts for operations, classrooms, research that is done, the money that goes through the university, people that gets hired, people that retires. So it's important to always be able to look through these three things. So it's people, space, resources, and in time. And all the systems we're seeing, they're all great. They're impressive. What Esri does, what AutoCAD, BIM, and everything else is fantastic. But sometimes there is we just get stuck with technology, and we kind of lose what really kind of makes the whole thing work. So my experience is that, and I work both in institutional and in the commercial side, is that on the corporate side, you got rent, so you have capital expenses, operating expenses. You push down the operating expense, the stock goes up because then there's more value. Similarly, on a higher ed front, on you got the capital budget, the one the trustees says, oh, we're going to build 5 new buildings and everything, and then there is this, which is the operating budget. It's you guys, it's the CAD, is the cleaning crews and everything else, and I think that's important is salaries and the cost of the facilities. And those things, they relate to that. Now, to put this one piece of the equation, my experience is in corporate, they do care about people. They do care about people because you belong to a certain department as a group. I'm going to move you from this floor to the other floor. Your department owns that space, and you got to get charged for it. And there's a whole rent process that goes through it. And I want to know where you are, because somewhere within the organization there is a director of occupancy, and his or her job is just to keep track of how much empty space there is in the company. And the reason they do it, because if there is too much empty space, I'm going to take these people and I'm going to move it into these lease floors that I have. They're half empty, and I'm going to get rid of those 2 leases. So bottom line is the money. People is extremely important because of the money. At the start of my career working in corporate, we implemented a space management system, and the first thing we did was people. And my boss, the director of the real estate, met with each one of the, and he says, this is your space, you're going to pay for it. You won't believe how fast they start dropping, because now there's nobody, I don't want this 5 workstation. So all of a sudden, there were empty space. So they do pay attention. In higher ed, we'll look into this, or what other institutions do, but I think that there is a trend in start paying attention to it because of budgets, because of the cost of the institutions to run them, and the cost of having people. So, why people matter? All these questions, where are they? Who are they? Where are they? What do they do? How much they cost? How much do they make for the institution? There's people in your institution, they actually produce revenue. It could be your researcher, or it could be the dining folks. So they're part of the institution, they're designed to make money for the institution, because in that way they collaborate to the well-being of the institution, and the institution can do other things. How much they occupy, and then then you get to the higher level. What department, center, program associated with space? What people? And then they start asking, professors, a tenure associate, John graduate, what are they? How many undergraduates do you have? How many? So those are all people focused questions, and translates in this. So the famous three circles. If you are in a space with your blue your blue dot here, and you start asking questions related to the people, the resources over this, it's asking you, for example, how many square feet in those 2 floors? Are they full? Is there any more leases in the vicinity? Are you aware that we have in the portfolio that we're perhaps not using? And if you switch to the next one, which is a more people-centric, then those are the kind of questions you might get to it. And in research, I was asked, how many PIs we have on that floor? Is there any empty benches? Bench space is precious. I've never seen a university say, I got half a building is empty. They want to know those on it, because then it translates into bigger plan with the department, what they do. And finally, if you take the same approach from a resources, a financial point of view, then they say, hey, what are the grants that relate to that floor? Or, are we aware when that lease is going to end up? What's the cost per foot for that particular site? Or what's the overall research cost for that floor, for that department? So we have looked at I think that the corporate is the easy one. Institutions are incrementally much more complicated than just the for-profit. That's easy. Money talks first. So we're looking at academic now. So that's a picture of your, for example, of your teaching people, where you could have a person as a faculty member, as a principal investigator. This person has research and grant spaces. This other person similarly has research, but this person doesn't have research space, I'm sorry. So you can go through the permutation and eventually you get to this guy that's, there's the tenure professor, and now you start looking at what they do, and that's what you see. Where you have a tenure professor that has been there for many years and started with, basically no space, and it goes up. Now he has a lot of space. Sounds familiar?
It's a scary slide.
Yeah, but that's what it is. But it'll get better. So the guy has a lot of space, but is close to retiring. So his grants are dwindling. He doesn't, he probably got a Nobel Prize. So it's there. But that's for your provost, that's a problem. He has a lot of space and no money. Brand new researcher. We look all over this guy we hire is a Japanese researcher in neuroscience. We're going to pluck him somewhere. He starts with 800 square foot. We give him an office, a bench, and some shared equipment space. He's a genius. But this guy is going to be here now maybe in 3 years, but that's where he's going to be. And when he's here, he's going to bring money. And there are institutions that they pay attention to this because this guy in 10 years is going to make enough on a couple of discoveries that the university is going to make $150 million and build a new biochemistry or genomics building. And that happens. So people are very important on the long range of the university. Your provost will pay attention to that. Your provost is not going to pay attention to a 3D system or an FM system, stuff that we love. Look at all these numbers I can create. So what this kind of stuff translates into it? Well, these are numbers that I'm aware of. They're coming from a research that was done back in 2008. Also, you can Google. Some of the stuff will come up. All this information is public. So in the world of research, everything runs on the direct cost, indirect cost, and total cost, being direct cost being salaries and equipment that you charge directly to the grant. Indirect is all the rest of the stuff. Total cost, those two things put together. What they do is they take the money, it gets related to the grant, and these are the things that come up. So there was a university where they stated in their policy that if you're over $500 per square foot of total cost, you got more space. You have less than 500, you're gonna have a discussion. It wasn't the words, but the the university has the right to revise certain things. It's an issue of productivity. So it varies from organization to organization based on what the institution thinks is the right thing to do. Some of them present it as both as the direct and indirect cost. In Mount Sinai, for example, it's a medical institution. It's very high because of medical centers that do research have a tendency to do that. And then other things they do. So based on that, there is a whole trend of university actually charging renting back to the departments because the time when it's all money. So they're looking at models where these things are different. Now, you can look at Minnesota School of Medicine. It's $23, no matter what, across the border. I don't care what you want. Your department, $23 a square foot. Some others, like the university, is $67 across. It doesn't matter what you have also, but they differentiate between direct and indirect. Some others, so Columbia, that's also the medical school. So that's and if you want, I can send you the presentation. So now we are looking at the academic, and specifically with the research, and now the administrative. If you recall, the famous number came up to 75%. That's about right. This is NYU and this is MIT. They're often their site. They're where 3/4 of the expenses are in basically building and people, and then the rest. And so for the administrative part, as we said before, some institutions do charge rent for space, which is related to people because you have people in there. And that some institutions, they start looking at a commercial model. So some things are, how many full-time employees per floor do I have? What's the standard full-time employee per assignable square footage? How much empty space I have? What's the delta between departments? So start looking at, the difference in occupancy between departments. What's more efficient, non-efficient? Then looking at building and floor efficiency. And for the metrics that relate to administrative stuff, that's important because if you're in a research institution, it dovetails into research. There has been changes in what it was called before the indirect cost recovery. A year ago, in Christmas 14, a year and a half, changes to the uniform code. Took all that was all the Office of Business Management, the White House, and all the ways of reporting back to the government changed. One of the changes is that administrative staff now can be charged back as before you couldn't. So it's important now, and if you happen to have a space management system and you locate it in the right place and they do the right stuff, you ended up that you could actually get rid of some of those costs and charge them back to the grants in that process. There's been other major change, which is the ability for you to report in a more timely fashion, not just at every year, but now they want to see it as they might come in for audit year and they want to see it. And so it's important to be able, and unfortunately I had the system, I don't think it works with the slides here, but the system here was in Archibus. We have has a workplace, what we call workplace transactions in place. So everything you do in the system, if you move a person from here to here, and you can go back and forth in the system, from day one that you implement this, turn the switch of workplace services to 10 years from now. And that works for people, departments, and everything else. So if you put that with grants together, which are some institutions, that gives you the ability to do to report back all this. Students. Thank God that's the easy part. It depends what they do. So undergraduate, graduates, your institution with either the housing office or the dean, they have all the system in the world. They know they don't need for you to produce. Maybe they do. Maybe you have drawing of the dorms, but they don't need the drawings for the dorm to assign people to do classroom scheduling. Yeah, you might be a support to them. I did that, providing the register office with seating capacity so that they have an idea and they could schedule the classroom better. Basically we give them a spreadsheet at the 6 weeks before, and they could schedule, and they were all happy. But it is a well-developed. It's not something that I would say, guys, that's the thing you got to look for. It's well developed usually in institutions. You can support it, you can help it, but because it's dovetailing the teaching researcher service, that usually they take care of it, the register office as well. So, yes, Fred is all great, but we don't do any of that stuff. Okay, well, let me tell you what your president is concerned about. If you never been here, Inside Higher Ed is a website that deals with university issues. They perform surveys, and actually one should come. I just got an email from them. They have the new, this year for the, and actually they have a webinar. Now they're presenting this live. All this stuff is actually, with PDFs. But to me, what this is telling you how can you put your systems in a more strategic place at your institution. Again, I'm a technology person. I love computers and everything. But when I went around and says, hey, we are finally finished with the digital campus map. We have digital imagery, 3-inch pixels. I can look and zoom from 4 miles. And I can measure the side view mirror of a car. The people who work with me are excited. The VP of facility could care less. The VP of facility asked me, can I use that for construction? I say, yeah, the specifications are so that, we have civil engineers working on it. So you can send the now you can send the maps out. And so shortcut it and get design development done quicker, because we know exactly that if that says there's a 2-foot drop, there's a 2-foot drop. But the thing that made my map valuable, it wasn't all the stuff that I was excited for. It was the university went into a 10-year strategic plan, and they took my map and they used it as a base to develop the 10-year plan. It was an expensive system. They use it now for 16 years. They have done 2 strategic plans. The cost basically becomes, irrelevant. So for you, when the president says, I have budget shortfalls, what it translates into it? If you spend 75% in there and their buildings, maybe you can be the person that can find out of where the fat is. Similarly, again, inside Higher Ed, this is 2012. Strategy important to institutional effort to reducing operating expenses over the next 2 to 3 years. Making use effective of facilities. And this is like 700 CFOs responded. I mean, this is like probably a good third to a half of the colleges that we have. I think there's about 1,500 colleges in the US. And then there's 1,200 community colleges. So it wasn't two people responding. They hired Gallup to do this. And they participate in this because they want to know what their peers think about, which are the presidents, the CFOs. So when somebody says making effective use of facilities, who are the people that knows the place? Is you. With all your CAD drawings, the BIM and everything else, you have the information. Using technology tool, business analytics, yada, yada, to define problems and potential improvements. Again, you have the information and so forth. Centralizing, consolidating administrative function. That's kind of a danger thing. It's good for them. But do you really need to have a CAD person engineer, a CAD person in design, another CAD person, none of them talking to each other, and they all push buttons at the same time? Maybe, proposing to your director says, hey, why don't we put all these people in a room so they can talk to each other. So, got a CAD/GIS/BIM department. It's kind of a centralized. Centralizing IT resources. Again, this applies to systems if you do it right, and you use systems that have connectors to Esri, or connect, like in our case, the software, Archibus that has connectors to Esri. I can bring in BIM models in a web viewer in Archibus. I can bring GIS models in Archibus. I have a connector with Oracle. I have a connector, of course. You have to pay for it. It's not like, here. It's, so, but you can build, and you can build it, and this applies for MSys, FM system trader, you guys, they all have this stuff. So you have to, if you do that and you have that, then you have to build a strategy of what pieces you have to put together. And to me, you have to look at the big picture with your boss. So the other thing is you know things about your campus that you probably can help. I mean, there was this gentleman wrote a whole paper about and went around and found people that had additional revenues. Well, here they discover parking lots, that's for sure. $16 a day, it's expensive as parking in Newark when I was working in New York. But, Richard Stockton, which is close to me, they turn into an administrative building. So Wisconsin rent space for cell towers. They did that at both institutions that I work with they will come to you for drawings of building, for the roofs. Ohio State actually get rid of all the parking operations out. So you have a GIS map. If you have a GIS map, you have all the parking information. Look into it. Can you quantify it? Can you bring it to somebody? If your parking office, it doesn't have that kind of thinking process, you probably can help them and say, hey, this is what really we have. So you have the numbers. You have the quantities. All you have to do, you have to look at it at a strategic, get out of the numbers that we love and the 3D and the flyovers. Move it and what you can do at a strategic level. And think in terms of what your boss needs. Because his or her boss, he wants things. So between you and the VP, you got your director. So you have to talk to your director, try to understand what the VP wants, and most likely you got information you can provide to the VP. At that point, your boss is happy, everybody's going to be happy. How you do it? Personal experience, small projects, pilot projects. If you try to get involved in any of this, any of the new technology, make it small, make it manageable. You can ask. I started my system with $500. I went to a department that I was a friend with, the department manager. We put the information of the department. I had a pony show. I spent $500. My boss said, fine, spend $500, go to whatever. It was a third of the cost of my laptop. But from that, I prove a concept. Small data sample, easier to explain. It will let you understand the big picture. It's easier to explain, to defend, and at the end, it will prove the concept. If you do it right on a small scale, most likely you're on the right direction because you already put down the logic, the processes that you need, and you thought about the things you need to do it right. And this brings me to this. Have you ever seen this picture? Back in 2008. This was done by National Building Information Model. So here is the GIS world, imaginary line, building. And then they put the BIM on the side, the GIS on this side, because it's 2008. So it wasn't quite sure. But the important thing is, this is at a room level, and it moves up. You got structures, linear structure, pipes, team, whatever. And here you have room, space, building, facility, and then it moves up. So this that was drawn up by this institute is still valid today. Because that's how space works. You go from a room to many rooms, to a floor, to a building, to a campus, to two campuses, to a county, to a state, to the world. So here is, you can locate your stuff. It makes, you can draw this on a piece of paper and put your information. You don't need a supercomputer to do this, because this is all about the things that you want to do and the processes that you want to achieve. And then, of course, it gets more complicated. And back in 2008, you see, still we have pipes and all the GIS layers and metadata and all that kind of stuff. But to me, that was the most interesting. And the other thing is, there's no rule of where to put a GIS system or where to put a CAFM system or an FM system. It depends what works for you. So it also depends on the tools you're going to use. So in GIS, it's easier to do certain things, and it's very difficult to do other things. If in GIS was easy to manipulate CAD drawings, we want to have Esri doing a plugin and people providing services to put the drawing in GIS. Same thing with FM, with CAFM system, looking at GIS. They don't host GIS data naturally. They have some sort of plug-in. So they're different world. But the thing that technology has done right now is to overlap these things. So finally, what is really important is the process. So you take space, people, resources, and the metrics that you can get out of it. Like we're looking, the indirect cost recovery and everything. Each one of this, and this is the allocating laboratory space to maximize research productivity. If you have the time, read it. It's not a light reading, but if your institution has research, and you perform any research into it, it will dig into the details. What taught me, which is this chevron, I didn't make it. It comes from this. They said inventory space, assign ownership, link to activity, measure performance, reallocate it. I thought, what that means? Well, this one, for example, inventory, FICAM/HIGIS, room numbers. How do you polyline a floor? Face of the wall. So all the standards you're using to build the information. Assign ownership. This is all the functional space utilization. organized research, departmental research, clinical research, wet research, dry research. The lab we look is $600 a square foot, that's wet. A dry research space is probably 40 because you can put wet, dry research in here. You don't need special mechanical system. It's a bunch of computers. And finally, link to the activity to resource, where are the grants. So in this, you can have a role if your university produces, the indirect cost recovery, your role usually can go further than just give me a spreadsheet, and sometimes they do that. And when they do that, you don't do a favor to your institution because the finance people that come over, they don't understand space, and they miss it. So, 4 minutes over. So we talk about the value knowing where people are, why institutions should actually invest in the effort of knowing where people are, and the possible strategies. And hopefully, I give you some pointers. So that's my story, and I stick to it.